Hello and welcome to LoveWorkLife consulting webinar, management webinar. I hope everyone's fit and well today. And if you can hear me, as always, if you could put a quick comment into the Zoom chat room as people start to enter, it'd be very much appreciated. I'd like to know that we can obviously hear and you can hear us and you can see us as well. Last week we had a massive response to the questions that we, not to the questions, to our questions that we sent out. And obviously we ran out of time, and therefore we're going to go over more questions this week. We've had a lot more questions come in, which is really, really good. And so we're going to sort of kick off on that. So we'll just let people sort of come in. Morning, Nicola. Glad you can hear us. Paul, we need to put that to everybody to say hello. Let me just...
Oh, hang on. What have I done wrong?
Nothing. Okay, personalities. Okay, so... Okay, so we're there. So glad people can hear us. Just a very quick call as people sort of coming in as we're getting ready today. As you can see, I've got my normal headphones on and Paul's got his headphones on. His comment to me was, I'm going to get some big headphones on to bring out my inner pilot. So it's good to see that the inner child in all of us doesn't disappear as we get older.
Well, it's either being a pilot or a cowboy, and I don't have a cowboy hat. So nothing much has changed. I was actually quite ready for the flight. Very funny in it. I would rather, actually, it was Dan Dare I really wanted to be, but that would, if anyone's listening who remembers Dan Dare, then they're probably as old as me, and you have my sympathies.
Even I don't remember Dan Dare.
No, so Dan Dare and the Mekons, mate.
Yeah,
the Eagle comic in the Eagle.
And you're right, Paul is ready for the flight. And what's quite interesting when you sort of look at I don't know if people have been watching the pictures that have been coming out from the spacecraft that they sent off into space this week, and they looked at the Apollo 11 flight deck with all the buttons, thousands and thousands of buttons. And they looked at the Challenger flight deck, which had more automated and more electronics in there, looked very thin, and then this one had just basically 3 screens, touch base. So it just sort of shows the advancement in technology and how technology is really pushing to the forefront of everything. And as Paul sort of rightly reminded me this morning, is that in most people's iPhones there is more computing power in that iPhone than actually took men to the moon, which is quite an incredible to think that you've got more power in your phone than they had on the Apollo rockets from there. So let's kick off. Most people are sort of starting to come in now, so if they come in a little bit later from there. So we finished off last week, and we finished off in a situation where we were looking at various different things, and one of the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer last week, which I think is very prevalent in the marketplace at the moment, is the question with regards to what markets do we think are going to come back quickly and why. And really that was asked by Ashley Wright and Tony Hutchinson. Were looking at the markets that were coming back. We've also had the same question asked by John Cups as well from there. So Paul, just very quickly, what do you think markets are likely to come back and why?
Well, firstly, I've got to congratulate you on the new PowerPoint transitions, Howard. I mean, curtains we have here. I don't, what you're talking about, advancements in technology. I've got to give you 10 out of 10 for that. Very good. In terms of the growth sectors, I think in truth they're the ones that most people would recognise. So clearly, the areas that are very rarely impacted by any form of downturn, and they connect to what we've been talking about, technology. So, I think most people will be very, very well aware that the IT sectors remain very strong. I'm working with several IT recruitment businesses, one of them in London, and they are still extremely busy. They're picking up assignments and opportunities. But you can't say, well, I work in IT recruitment any longer. It's just far too broad. You have to be a specialist in that space. So, I mean, Howard, that's your background. You know which particular spaces there are, and it's ever changing, as to your point earlier, and the evolution of IT will always mean that there'll always be employment opportunities for specialists. Clearly, we all know, with regret, we know that the medical world is extremely busy. And of course, if you are involved in Medicare of any kind, social care, nursing, providing doctors, then I'm very confident you're extremely busy at this moment. which is great for the recruitment businesses involved in that space, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Nevertheless, it's always going to be an area that's going to be busy. And in particular, when you look at things like nursing, given the aging population of our country, there will always be a great need for medical recruitment businesses. Elsewhere, I've always said finance recruitment has always been a very strong area. Everybody needs bean counters, Howard. Everybody needs accountants. There'll never be a lack of them. There'll always be an opportunity to do well in the finance space. Again, a bit like IT, you need to be pretty much aware of specific sectors that you're going to be involved in, or geographies, whether you're working qualified, part quals, but certainly those are areas. Another area would be legal. Again, we know no matter what the economy, there's always a need for lawyers, whether it's the housing market, conveyancing, whether it's litigation of any kind, criminal litigation, for example. There'll always be crime, whether it, of course, are trust and probate. So if you're looking at people obviously unfortunately passing away, these are all areas that are clearly always going to be very busy. If we take the reverse to that question, which areas of recruitment are likely to find life difficult? I think we can reasonably say, and I speak from experience, that dealing with one particular organization, the events market, hospitality at the moment, we're all very aware, is really just dead. Will it come back? Of course it will, but it's going to take a while. Anything I think involved presently with healthcare, any form of entertainment, it's going to be a slow climb back, but a climb back there will be. And next year, as we see the Nike swoosh that we keep talking about, as we see the economy really improving, as we get into the second half of 2021, I think we can expect to see a boom time for those sectors. But at the moment, are clearly extremely difficult. Anything around catering, hospitality, any kind of venue management, any kind of events management, all those areas are very, very hard. I think generalist recruitment will be fine. And I'll give you one very sound reason, Howard, why I think that. That's because the temporary and interim market is going to come back very strong as we come into the workplace again. I was talking to a client last night. Already they're picking up temporary interim roles. And exactly what we've always said, what we've been saying over the last 4 months. Although we've entered this situation because it's a humanitarian crisis coming out, we will see a similar pattern to economic crises that we've lived through in the past, meaning that organizations will be reluctant to take on permanent staff in any great numbers unless they're specialist staff. They'll be reluctant because they may be making redundancies, or they may be unsure about their futures. However, they will not be reluctant to take on short-term labor. And that's why if you're in the interim market, contractors, temps, you're in for a decent time, because that's where the growth is going to be. Ultimately, that will turn into permanent recruitment as employers start to feel safer and more assured about the future.
I think that's an interesting thing, and I'll sort of give an idea on the IT front. The IT front is always going to be a market that is growing and expanding, and I think at the moment the way the market is working as a whole across the world is the data market, the identity market, anything that is accessing data or supplying people with data will be really, really prominent and moving forward. You then got to throw on the cloud market into there. But I think there's a couple of markets that you potentially missed out that I think will also be very, very busy. As we know, there's a lot of staff on furlough at the moment. There's a lot of staff that potentially will be made redundant when COVID-19 comes to an end and the furlough process comes to an end. So I think there's an opportunity there for the HR organisations to be extremely busy and be pushing from there, because obviously everyone's going to need a really good HR process to do the correct things through making people redundant. One thing that you've got to be very careful of if you are thinking about making redundant is making sure that you follow the process that's laid down by the government, because I also see an opportunity of people who are being made redundant to become a little bit if I could say the word, become a little bit litigistic with you and start to take you to court for various different things. So making sure you follow the due process will be really important from there. I think the building trade, again, will be a market that starts to come back very, very quickly, because the government is very, very keen to sort of drive that forward. And that's not just the building of houses, but the transportation of roads and building of roads would be very, very good for the business and good for the marketplace, which means logistics are going to be very, very high. And obviously with logistics comes warehousing and the big warehousing operations. So I think, get back to your original comment there about some of the marketplaces that we, the generalist marketplaces, those type of marketplaces that cover quite a lot of that blue collar work will be busy. And some of the white collar work will be very, very busy as well. And you're right, the contract market, the temp market is a market that starts to come back very, very quickly. And we've got to sort of understand what that means for you as a recruitment agency, to make sure that as a recruitment agency, you have the capabilities, if you're not already doing contract, of delivering contract. And it's not just about the process of finding contracts. So there's a lot more that goes behind that you've got to be very, very wary of. So I think, if you're thinking of going into the contract market, you need to really examine what you need to be doing to make sure you don't fall foul of the law and fall foul of cash flow problems, which a lot of the contract market does seem to throw up. So there's a lot of things down the sectors that are starting to come back, and certainly some of the clients I'm speaking to now, they're starting to see the green shoots of the market return. And I think as lockdown gets eased and we become sort of on the latch, so to speak, it will become even more abundant which markets start to come back very, very quickly. And as I say, that spike that comes down and comes back up again, I think it'll be more bathtub shaped. It will come down very, very quickly, then go along for a while, and then come back up very, very quickly. So
Howard, and I would add that I think I also forgot to mention, clearly transport, the supply chain, I guess would be the broader comment, will be busy, is already busy. So I'm dealing with, working with couple of LGV, HGV recruitment businesses, and we're beginning to see a slow upward turn in the number of shifts, number of people working. And I think when we look at the whole supply chain, so right into the factories, I was speaking to a client last night who are blue collar. They provide a huge number of temporary staff to factories and warehouses around the south of England. And they've experienced a very slight dip in the supply of temporary staff during the last few months. And I won't give exact numbers because that wouldn't be right, but it's a relatively small percentage drop that they've experienced in the last few months. And they're expecting to see their normal return very, very fast. So I think blue collar, supply chain, drivers clearly are very busy and are going to get busier and busier now, I think, within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And all of us will notice the roads beginning to get busier. When you see that, you will know very clearly that we're returning back to some level of normality.
So the next question that we were sort of asked, which I think is a very important question, and we can sort of add this a little bit further, is about mental health. And this is a question that's been asked on quite a lot of the webinars that we've been on and been working on, is that, tips to maintain good mental health during the downturn, but also tips to sort of like be mindfulness and stay healthy as we come out of lockdown. Thoughts, Paul?
Oh gosh, this is a huge subject, and it's a really important subject for everybody. I mean, everybody listening, including me and you, Howard. I mean, I said to you, I don't often talk about feeling, my feelings, certainly not in public, but, yesterday morning when I woke up, it was sort of, as you do, coming to, and suddenly thought, oh my God, we're still here. I'm not going to work in the sense of leaving the house and getting on a train or driving somewhere. It just struck me, my gosh, when is this going to come to an end? It's one of the very first times I've felt that sort of set that feeling. I felt that way since it began. I was over it in no time. It's amazing what a gallon of caffeine will do to the system. But I did have that moment. I wouldn't say it's kind of normal, I think. It just reminded me of how important it is to just keep a very positive outlook. I think let's tackle this from a number of different perspectives. If you're a business owner, you've got a three-pronged focus, I think, at the moment. Your clients, your candidates, and extremely importantly, your colleagues. In fact, it's 4 because it's yourself as well, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Oh, we've got very nice looking slides appearing here, Howard. So I think you could ask yourself, what are the mindsets? Firstly, I think there'll be a real level of fear and trepidation when you talk to people. Um, Most people have, to some degree, felt a loss of security and normalcy, shall we say, and that level of insecurity can trigger almost a grief, a sort of a level of grief, and with it comes alongside shock, denial, anger, and at its extreme, depression. And a crisis certainly triggers just a huge range of physical and psychological responses. So that include heightened sensitivity and distress. So I think we all, to a degree, have felt that a little bit. And some people that you work with will have experienced that to a higher degree. And I also think, and we're talking about this quite a lot at the moment, the government particularly, people have become accustomed to the lockdown. You know, it's been, what is this, the 11th week now? And the sanctity, if you like, and security of living in their own homes, working in their own homes. So thinking about leaving homes to go to work is a stressful thought, especially if you're going to use public transport, say in the big cities, specifically London, Manchester, Birmingham. What are we going to do? How are we going to get on trains and tubes? And we don't know the answers yet. So I think there's a lot of anxiety around that. I think you've also got to think that, let's talk about this. There are people who are furloughed today who are probably aware that when the furlough system finishes, they will lose their jobs. That's talking about your candidates. It's talking about the thoughts that your clients are having, and it may be something you're thinking about too. Now, I'm not trying to distress anybody, but the reality is that we are going to see, I think everybody knows, a spike in unemployment when the furlough system starts to wind down. So some people will be feeling very anxious and very nervous about their jobs and their careers. But that's an important point, because if they work for you, you need to put their minds at rest, make them very aware that you value them, that you're looking forward to them coming back to work. So if you think about all those things, and I'm going to add one other point here. We, as professional recruiters, we know that when people sit at home or go on holiday, so Christmas time, summertime, and they take a couple of weeks off of work, they have an opportunity to kind of review, contemplate, relax, think about their lives, what they want to do with their lives, what they want to do with their jobs. And we know that's true because there's always a spike in vacancies and candidate flow when we get beyond school holidays in September and January. These are our prime times for permanent employment. Now, people have been at home for 3 months. So you can reasonably expect that a lot of people are going to emerge from this thinking, I don't want to do that job anymore. I don't want to do that part of my job anymore. There'll be people deciding, even if their employers aren't, that they want to change jobs, that they want to do something differently. And we can expect to see a lot of those emotions and views as we emerge from this.
So I think, to add to that question, I think Chris Hardy also asked a question about sort of motivating staff that are, feeling the pressure and what to do on that. And I think the look of it is very, very straightforward. Is even though there is a downturn, how people come back into the marketplace and how people are seen in the marketplace is really important. And mindset is really, really challenging. And there's a question here by Sarah Collins, which I'll link it back to the questions that we've been asked, is, by Fiona Brown, is how do I best overcome persistent negative thoughts about the future economy? And a lot of staff, a lot of people will be having negative thoughts about all sorts of things, not just the economy. And I think this is sort of things that we've got to sort of look at and how we address that from a management point of view. And I always class your mind as being a very, very powerful tool, and it's the most powerful tool that you have. But what actually happens is your brain is very good at dealing with stress, and your brain has two types of stress. There's what's called eustress, which is what you feel, say, before Christmas or getting on a roller coaster. It's a really exciting type, but it puts your brain in a little bit of stressful situation. And then there's distress, which obviously we all know about. That de-stress is things that properly distress the person, distress the body. Okay, and what your mind looks to do for everything that it does, it looks to build pillars of confirmation of everything that you're thinking about. So if you start to think about a poor economy and you start to read the press about poor economy, guess what your brain starts to pick up? It'll start to pick up all the negative press. It'll start to pick up all the negative things. And it will do that to make it compound your thought that the economy is poor. And it's like saying, I bet we've all paid, I mean, I remember as my children were growing up paying the painful game Mini Punch. Of you saw a mini on the street, Mini Punch, if you saw it, and different colours had different things. And I was really thinking, but there's hardly any minis on the road at the stage. And then all of a sudden you saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of minis, and the game got a bit ridiculous because your brain is now looking for those things and recognizing those things. So to focus the mind and motivate staff, you've got to focus them on the positive things are likely to happen. And even in a downturn, there's lots of positive things that happen. Lots of really good businesses are born in a downturn and prosper in a downturn. So if you've got a really good business plan moving your business forward, you've got a really good business strategy to move your business forward, and imparting that knowledge onto your team and inviting your team to help build that plan starts to motivate them for what's going on. Because as we said last week, there's lots of people who have been enjoying furlough maybe a little bit too much, and now they're going to have to come back to work. So you're going to have to whet their appetite of what's actually going to happen. They all know they can't be on furlough for too long, and they know that they want to come back to something that is possibly different. So we said this, right, I think it was week 1, we said if we leave furlough with the same attitude that we entered furlough with, then we've missed the whole opportunity. And I was speaking to a client this morning who very much was saying they're changing the whole of their business. They're looking at every single aspect of their business. So when people come back, there's a refreshing business for the staff in the main. There's a refreshing outlook to what they're going to do with clients and candidates. And if you involve your staff in that process and help them drive that process through, then they start to get motivated by what they see as the future. They start to then build those positive pillars around them because they can see what the market is like. And the difference is no one's born pessimistic and no one's born optimistic. We are a product of our environment. So if you create a negative environment, then you'll see negative things. If you create a positive environment, you'll create a positive thing. So you've got to start to work on that. The other thing that you've got to think about very heavily is the language that you use communicating. So just thinking, saying, persistent negative thoughts about the future economy. Okay, so the word that you all focus on in that sentence is the word negative. And the word negative then has a real connotation about that whole sentence. If you put, how do I come over persistent thoughts about the future economy? It takes the negative away from there because it says there's a negative side and a positive side because it doesn't actually label what your thoughts are. So your inner language becomes really important to you. So if you're talking to yourself and it's a very negative conversation, then you have to change your inner language to make it a positive conversation. And the way you use your spoken words and your spoken communication across to your staff will spark how their inner conscience speaks to them. So if you're speaking to your staff about there is an economic downturn coming, there's going to be a crisis coming, then that's what they're going to be seeing, crisis. If you're saying there's going to be a downturn coming, however, there's going to be massive opportunity in this downturn, that's what we're going to focus on, the opportunity. We're going to go take opportunity from our market share point of view, etc., etc. Then guess what? Your consultants start to focus on that. So your terminology and your communication becomes very important because what your brain is very good at is creating the confirmation of what you're saying constantly. So if you say it in a negative way, then your brain will confirm that by finding those things. If you say it in a positive way, your brain will look for those positive things. So to create that motivational environment, your communication is really key to that. And I think we've got to look at that very heavily, Paul, as we come out of this. Yep. What we say to our consultants and what we say to our clients has to be realistic, but it has to be positive.
I think, Howard, just a couple of, you made some brilliant points, and there's a couple I just want to expand on. So coming back to the point about worrying about the economy. So I have an attitude around this kind of thing, and that is that I have, and no one listening today has any impact, any control over the economy. We have no control over the economy or politics, very little anyway. And my attitude generally is I'm not going to expend any energy or negative thoughts about something I have no control over. It will be what it will be. None of us knew you couldn't possibly have imagined coming into this year that we would be in this position. It's just unbelievable. If someone had said this to us over the Christmas period, you'd have thought they'd had too much to drink. It's just simply unbelievable. So there's no point in worrying about stuff, because actually we can't control it, and we just have to deal with it. My view about this is that I want you guys to focus in areas where you have a level of control or a high degree of control. And if you apply yourself to the things that you can control, i.e., reviewing your business strategies, reviewing the way in which we're going to offer better quality service to our clients and our candidates, gaining an edge over our competitors, as Howard says, getting our people motivated, ready for the new world of work. If you focus in those areas, the stress goes. And it's entirely possible, trust me, and Howard and I have done this, it's entirely possible to build more business during an economic downturn than you were pre the economic crisis, by providing better quality services and looking for other opportunities to support your clients. Focus on the things you can control, and you don't need to worry because you're in control, therefore there's no worry. And don't worry about the things that you have no control over, because that stuff's just going to happen, and you with everybody else, we have to deal with it. And we'll get through this. We'll get past this. We talked about the Nike swoosh earlier, and we expect that next year, as we get into April, May, this time next year, we will expect to see an improvement in the economy. And the Bank of England have made that suggestion, have made that statement, and we believe that too. But in the meantime, it's going to be tough, yes. But we've been through these times before. We've come out the other end, and we'll get through this too. I think, just to come back to the point about staff, I just want to recover this point. If you've got people that have been furloughed particularly, I want to ask you, are you aware of how they're feeling at the moment? Do you speak to them regularly? Because, for the most part, we should be in touch with them 2-3 times a week, especially if they live on their own. Are they coping with living on their own? How are they feeling? If they're living with other people, you also need to be close to them. There will be, and I'm not suggesting this is, please God, it's not happening, but as we emerge from this, we'll be hearing stories about domestic abuse and all sorts of awful things that have happened during this period. Our people are part of the broader society. What happens in the outside world, to a degree, happens to our people. You need to be very close to your guys to find out how they're feeling. I think significant periods of loneliness can really generate a huge sense of isolation and really impact people's mental health. So it's really important to be in touch with those people and make sure that you're talking with them. You need, I think, to demonstrate empathy, so you understand how they're feeling. Obviously, provide kindness, listen very actively to what they're saying to you, and be prepared to express your own sense of vulnerability and compassion. Every one of us, we're no different from anybody else. We need to feel safe. It's that, I forget, is it Maslow's hierarchy? Right at the beginning, at the base of the pyramid, is feeling safe. Our people need to feel safe. Ask them, just ask this question: what do you need to feel safe? What do I need to do to make you feel safe? If people feel safe and happy, they're fine. And getting people to talk is a cathartic experience. They're not likely to talk in your get-togethers on Zoom in amongst everybody else. I mean, if they're feeling down and depressed and worried and concerned, it's very unlikely they'll open up in front of other people. You need to have one-to-one conversations. But you also need to build, as Howard said, camaraderie with the people in your business. Get them ready, get them fit for the start of the new world of work. And from your point of view, and this is a tough thing, you need to be smiling. It's very difficult to be happy when things are tough, but you're going to have to put on a brave face. That's the mark of a great leader, the person that smiles in the face of adversity. And you have to be that person. You have to be strong, as Howard said, optimistic. You have to consistently reinforce the visions and the goals of your business. And importantly, the exciting prospects for the business. We are coming out of what we hope is the worst of this situation. Please God, things get better very quickly. So hopefully we're at the end, the beginning of the end, if that makes sense. So no reason why we shouldn't be optimistic, especially, as I said a moment ago, if you're taking control of improving your business model. Plus, you need to be talking, I said it at the beginning, talk to your clients now. Find out what their mindsets are. All of the insecurities that I've been talking about relative to us and our people will be precisely the same worries and concerns and insecurities our clients and our candidates will be having. And we need to be talking to them. We need to be showing compassion, empathy, listening to their fears, and providing support and kindness to them. All of those things will make a significant difference as we go forward in the near future.
I think it's very interesting on that, Paul, when you look at that, to give you a real life situation about positive and negative mindsets and how it manifests itself. I remember in the last big recession, my business and my team were having personally a very good time. We were billing lots of money. We weren't seeing the same things that other parts of the same business were seeing. And I said in a board meeting, it's all down to your mindset and what you genuinely believe. And I said in the meeting, I said, to me, there is no such thing as recession for a recruiter. The only thing a recruiter has is either clients that are buying or not buying. So the only recession is if you can't find clients that are buying. And there's always clients that are buying, even in recession. This argument ensued, and the challenge was, I bet you daren't put that on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn was fairly new at the time and fairly sort of, lots of things were going on. So I wrote an article on LinkedIn about having a good time during the recession and how your mindset drives that. And I instantly got a whole swathe of people saying, I'm in this industry, it's appalling. I'm in this industry, appalling. And this guy that challenged me kept coming back and saying, see. And then all of a sudden, lots, and I mean probably 10 times as many as the negative, positive comments started coming in. I'm in the same industry as you, and we're having a really good time. I'm in the same industry, and it was all different industries, and it was really interesting. Those that came back with a really positive mindset seemed to be having a really good building phase during a downturn. And I think it is all about that mindset. So if you go in with a positive mindset and you truly believe that and you drive that, then you create that positive atmosphere across your team, and then they will start to die that. They start to see opportunities, because as soon as you become pessimistic, your mind closes yourself off to opportunities, and it's finding the opportunities. And yes, there are fewer of them, but if you're attuned to looking for them and you believe they are there, then you will genuinely find them.
Howard, I would say, and this is going to make me sound a bit, as my wife would say, a bit oogie-floogie, but I always think that if you go out into the wide universe with your arms open, amazing things happen. It does. I think, I'm sure every person on this call could give examples of stepping through the door of opportunity, grasping opportunities without worrying about failing. Just go for it. Every time I've done that, I've loosened up, stopped worrying, thrown myself into something. Amazing things have happened. And I think that that's where we're at. I think you don't want to be taking unnecessary risks, obviously. I mean, that's what we do for a living, Howard, isn't it? We guide people. We try to prevent them from making mistakes. We give them good, sound advice, good, wise counsel, using our experience and knowledge of being in the industry for combined about 80 years. But I think that there is a risk. There's always risk in everything. You can mitigate the risk, but at the end, you've got to go for it. Worrying about things isn't going to make a difference. So I've always felt that, and it's true of my background and career, that when I've decided to just go for stuff, even acknowledging there was risk, amazing things have happened. And I think we have this opportunity coming up where it's time to throw yourself in, do the things you've always wanted to do, change your business model if you think it's appropriate, improve the quality of service you give to clients and candidates for a range of methods. We've talked a lot about this recently, video platforms, a whole range of things that we can be doing to increase the prospects of making placements, getting more people out. Go for it. Do things differently. Change things. If you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? So just throw yourself in, and believe me, amazing things happen. People that hold back and worry are the ones that are going to stand still and may find that they are engulfed by the circumstances rather than taking control. Sorry, Howard.
I was going to say, so here's a really positive mindset. What are your tips on dealing with increased workload and pressure caused by COVID pandemic by Chris? And that's a real way. You're expecting a massive increase in workload, and I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And I think, an increase in workload is no different than what it was before we had the pandemic, and I think you've got to sort of start to sectionalize your workload and look at what is true. And this is, we talk about an awful lot, what is a true opportunity and what is at the far side of that a false opportunity. You'll have lots of clients out there throwing potential jobs out to you, but have no genuine commitment to you, which will increase your workload, increase your pressure. If you're working with clients who are genuinely committed to you and either working with you on a retained basis or an exclusive basis, then that pressure sort of seems to start to reduce. So it's how you deal with your clients and how you speak with your clients. If you're pitching to your clients properly and you're pitching each individual recruitment service that you offer, whether it be contingency, exclusive, retained, or a paid model, etc., then the further up that chain you get, the pressure becomes less, because the more you and your client are joined together, the more skin in the game both parties have. If you're constantly working requirements where you are in lots of competition, it's contingency work, and therefore you're not going to get paid if you fail, okay, then I can see why the pressure will increase. So you've got to make sure that every job that you work, there is a huge opportunity to actually place that job, and you scale your requirements as they come in. And I've talked about that on some of the training sessions that I do on a Wednesday about scaling your clients and grading your requirements. And therefore, you're not going to be working requirements that you're never going to place. And I think when you start to work lots of requirements, that's when the pressure comes, when you can start to see the actual opportunity of the requirements by the actual level of commitment from your client. Then you start to see the opportunity and you start to see the productivity. That doesn't create pressure, that creates momentum and motivation to actually fill. Pressure comes from working lots of low-end roles with zero commitment, and you're scrabbling around to find it, and then you have to normally re-find the candidate again because the client rejects them all. That's what causes pressure. So what you choose to work will prevent the pressure. If you choose to work everything, you'll end up with loads of pressure, because the demand will come from the clients where they have zero commitment, and that to me is a very, very poor place to be. So to be in a positive place, choose who you work with. You might work with less clients, but you'll make more placements.
I think you make brilliant points, and we've been talking a lot about moving away from contingent recruitment. One of the big changes I think we have this brilliant opportunity is to move towards exclusive and retained opportunities, particularly if you start to use technology to introduce candidates. So you can use the video platform to introduce your shortlist or long list of candidates, taking part in those interview panels, and guiding clients to make quicker, better decisions using the technology platforms that we're all aware of now. And moving towards this retained exclusive piece, I think, is really important. I think you're right, Howard. You know, we all know, and I don't like the expression, but we've all fallen for it over the years. We can all be busy fools in recruitment. We can all work jobs that we were never going to fill. We all get flattered sometimes when we get onto PSLs of large corporations and then discover, although we get lots of roles, we very rarely fill any. I think it's time to think hard about how many clients we want to work with, because it's not necessarily about the number of clients we have, but it is absolutely about the quality of the relationships that we have with those clients, leading to what we always refer to as a trusted advisor position. If I can just move that question slightly to the left, if you like. If you're looking at the stress that's involved, I mean, Howard's made reference, rightly so, to prioritizing what you should be doing every day, working hardest at the points where the priorities are clear and working backwards from that position. You'll never clear off every single thing on your to-do list, since when has that happened in recruitment? And any recruitment consultant that's got nothing on his or her to-do list is clearly not working, because I've never finished a day when I haven't created more things to do than I started with. But I do think, just to look at it from a mental health perspective, and it sounds, I'll give you a perfect example. I had about a 20-minute break. I started talking with Howard at 8 this morning. I've had back-to-back calls, but there was a point when I put some coffee on, and my wife said to me, "It's a beautiful day. I'm sure it is with you as well. Come outside and just sit down for 15 minutes and have a cup of coffee with me." And I did. We sat outside. The air's beautiful. Sun was on my head. And I just thought, yeah, it's lovely, you know, felt good to be alive for just that moment, not thinking about work, just taking a deep breath. And that point about deep breathing is important, because when you feel stressed, I know it sounds silly and you've heard it before, but a simple practice is to engage in deep and intentional breathing. So, you know, deep breathing slows the heart rate. It also restores the body to a calmer, a more composed state. So even a few deep breaths can suffice. So just deep breathe for a while, because it alleviates, it suppresses fear, it suppresses stress, and do it somewhere lovely, because the air is great out there. It's never been so clear and smelt so beautiful than it smells at the moment. Enjoy it, and notice the difference that it impacts upon you from a physical perspective, and indeed your own emotions. Also keep things in context. I know we all believe that work is incredibly important, and it is, but I think we've all discovered over the last 12 weeks and been reminded that work is not the most important thing in life. It really isn't. The health and of the people around you, your health, your loved ones, far more important. Money can't replace health. Money doesn't necessarily make a difference. There have been plenty of very wealthy people who have finished their lives in an unhappy state. Money doesn't make you happy. It can certainly contribute, but it's not the most important thing. And we've realized that. So get in touch with your thoughts, recognize the things that make you happy. And most of the things that really make us happy cost nothing. So keep things in context. We can always improve our positions, provided we've got good health. As our grandparents used to say, you got good health, you've got everything. So we're in a good place, guys. We're healthy, we're intelligent people. We can push off from this position. We can improve our businesses. In fact, we can move our businesses to a better place. But importantly, look after yourselves, take care, spend time, be nice to yourself, be kind to yourself, and in turn, be kind to the other people around you.
So as always, we like to throw a quick question in, Paul, for you to try and answer as quick as you can. So here's a quick question from Sarah, Sarah Grace. We spoke about outplacements briefly last time. How do we go about pricing this?
So Howard will tell you, I run a piece of outplacement business with a very large electronics business. What was it, about 2 years ago, Howard?
Yeah, it was about 2 years, 18 months ago. Yeah.
So just brief story. I was away in Marbella, of all places, attending a wedding, and I had a call with the HR director, global HR director of this world famous electronics business, to pitch for the outplacement business. They were making redundancies, and we had the opportunity to win the business, Howard. So I ran up to the hotel room from the swimming pool. I'd rehearsed in my head exactly what I was going to say to this global HR director. The call went really well. She clearly bought into us and what we were proposing, and then she asked me for our price. And I gave her a price, and she said, yeah, that's brilliant. That's actually less than our budget. At which point I wanted to punch myself in the face, because I knew at that moment I'd underpitched it. We won the business, and I think we did a great job. What did I do wrong? I did everything that I teach everybody not to do. I went in too low. I should have gone in higher, got in higher, and I wanted to hear the sharp intake of breath, that noise, because I knew, we should all start at a level that is higher than the one we actually expect. If we get it, then we've underpitched it, which is what happened with me. And so we did the work, and actually we did okay. I mean, it was a decent piece of work in terms of fee, but we definitely underpitched it, and that was my fault. So lesson learned. I think what you've got to do when you're looking at outplacement is establish what your day rate is. Now that's a tougher question than it may seem, because when I set up my management consultancy business, for example, and I got the Idiot's Guide to Running a Management Consultant from W.H. Smith, I remember reading through and figuring out, well, how do I price my day? What am I worth? This, by the way, is no different from how lawyers price their hourly rates and their day rates and so forth. You have to establish that you're not going to be working for 52 weeks every year. You're going to have holidays, you're going to have sickness, you're going to have bank holidays. And so you also may not be working, fee earning every single day, and you have to work backwards from that point. And you start from the position of saying, how much should my turnover be? And now break that down into the days available for me to actually work in, taking into account that I'm not working every day of the year. then you'll end up with a day rate. Now, that may also be relative to your average fee level. So it's a bit of mathematics, but you come up with a day rate. And as I've just said, you then say, right, let me take this from 3 positions. The rate I would love to have, probably won't get. My middle position, which is the one I expect to get, and my walkaway price. What is my lowest level of fee that I'm prepared to accept before I say, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to do this. So outplacement is relative to your day rate, but there's a lot of work. And one of the things I didn't consider when I put that pitch together, and I underestimated it, was how much time we prepared for that outplacement work. We put days and days into prepping, putting presentations together. I completely got it wrong. It was a lesson learned. It was the first piece of outplacement work we'd done, so I had to learn somewhere. But it's not just the days you're working, it's the time you're going to put in advance to actually conduct the outplacement work. And there will be days and days of prep. Trust me on that point. So when you're working it out, think through the days involved in preparing and the days you're going to conduct the work. And that should lead you to the fee level. And then remember, you're waiting for the sharp intake of breath. When that happens, you know you've pitched it correctly.
So, another short answer, Paul. Love it.
Sorry.
And I was massively involved in that process, and Paul's right. It's that the fee didn't sort of really counterbalance the amount of work we actually put in. If you put the fee that based on what we did on site, then yes, it did. But the amount of work we did off site was huge. So yeah, there's a lesson to be learned from there. So pricing it, I'd price it on your what you work your per diem rate out and work from there. I want to try and pull 3 questions together now from Sarah Collins, Julie Spires, and then it will lead into Caroline Naylor's conversation. Julie asked is what the 3 tips in establishing new client relationships given the new landscape. Sarah's asked what is the one thing that you should focus on post-lockdown, and Caroline's is as we start the new norm, what expectations as a business owner should we have about fee and performance? And I think all of those 3 link together because certainly from our conversations, they all lead to the same thing about what we should be focusing on when we sort of come out of post-lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, there's great questions. I'm going to go back to what we've been talking about a lot today, which is, I think it starts with getting you and your people prepared. You know, recruitment is not, as we often say, it's not rocket science. If you have the right people working for you, they're motivated, they share your vision, you provide brilliant leadership, then you have a successful business. You know, if your people you own them, as it were, hearts and minds. They're prepared to walk through walls for you as you are for them. Then that passion, that level of commitment transfers itself into the way we take care of our candidates and clients. And that gives you, as we always say, the 1% improvement above your competitors that it takes to win business. Start with you, start with your people, number 1 point. Second thing, of course, is going to be right now, and as we get closer to getting back to work, you've got to get close to your clients. You've got to understand what's going on in their world, where they see things improving. You have to identify which of your clients and which of your sectors are going to hit the ground running, and you need to be close to those people. I will add to that we've not yet talked, and I think hopefully we'll get to it shortly, about diversification, but you do need to be looking very carefully at the sectors you're involved in, which companies are going to do well, and get close to those guys, particularly if you already have a good relationship with them, and look for the upsell and cross-sell opportunities, because recruitment is recruitment. And whilst I'm not advocating that you try to do every piece of recruitment for every one of your clients, which would be a mistake, I do think that you can certainly look at opportunities to work alongside other people in the organizations you already work with, and if you like, adjacent comparable work to the business you normally do. So, you know, there will be other opportunities for you, but you will only identify those by being close to your clients.
I think my view on that, what's the first thing that you should really focus on? And that to me is very, very straightforward. Focus on putting your best team on the pitch. If you focus on getting your best team on the pitch, then your best team will look after your clients and look after your candidates, and therefore that will look after your profit. If you go chasing profit, then you're going to be in a real sorry situation. So to me, it's focus on putting the best people on the pitch. And you've got to understand at this moment in time that some of your best people might be furloughed. So how do you bring them back, and what do you do when you bring them back? And we've talked about this before, about taking this furlough period a bit like the closed season in a football situation. When the season starts, you need to be fit and ready to go. So if you haven't done any pre-season training and development of your core skills, then you're going to be very, very rusty and behind the game. So focusing on your people should be the first thing that you should really look at. That then leads into sort of really Caroline's question, which is regarding about fees and performance and KPIs. My simple comment on fees is very straightforward. If we start to get into a bidding war and drop our fees, then we've lost. We need to stand proud on our fees, and we need to have a walk-away point to make sure that we are not just dropping for dropping's sake. That is just transactional recruitment, and that is not what we want. We want to be making sure we have a future where it is based on relationships and based on providing value. So if you can provide value to your clients, there is no difference between post and pre-COVID with regards to the value that you are offering. You need to make sure that you're driving that value proposition to your clients constantly, and stand by your fees, stand by what you're doing. Yes, you might have to negotiate certain things, but make sure we're doing it properly. Make sure we're just not thinking, right, okay, I'm going to go 15% and then I'm going to drop to 12 or 10%, or I'm at 25% and I'm going to drop to 15%. It's just a foolish way of running a business. I was asked a question yesterday by a client. I was doing a half-day mentoring session with her, and the question was, I've been told, I've been on a webinar, and a recruiter said, to get exclusive business, you should drop your fee drastically to ensure that you get exclusive business. And I said, okay, so let's talk about this. And she said, well, talk to me about your bog standard package. Well, here's my contingency package, and then I want to pay you to pay me more for my exclusive package. Then I want you to pay me more for my retained package. And I'm saying, great. So you understand that for a better service, you have to pay more money. But what you're actually doing is taking your best service and discounting it hugely off your lowest service. What does that make your service look like? It makes its service look like cheap. It makes it look like you don't even value your own service. So you have to stand by your service and stand by your offerings. And therefore, you've got to learn to negotiate. And negotiation isn't all about price. Negotiation can be on lots of other things. So my expectations on fees are very straightforward. Stand by your fees and do not drop your fees, because if you do, you really struggle massively to get your fees back up. And certainly in the recessions in the 90s, the early 2000s, and the 2008 recessions, I made a point of, we did not drop our fees. We did not drop our fees at all, and we didn't suffer. In fact, we started to increase our fees slowly, and clients went with us because of the focus on value that we provided to our clients. And that came by focusing on the company providing value to the staff, and the staff then provided that value back to the clients. So it's really important. So KPIs is a slightly different question. And KPIs, I always think you have to fit your KPIs to what you want to achieve, but your KPIs need to be driven with regards to outcome. You can't sit there and say how many telephone calls you make, how many times you call a client, etc., 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 is a real good KPI to measure. It should be measured on, I believe, KPIs, the number of new requirements you pick up each month, each week or each month, the number of CVs you submit to those requirements, and the number of interviews that they generate. If you can generate that certain number every single week, then you'll start to hit your targets. If you're not hitting those numbers, then yes, you get to look back into what each consultant's doing with regards to input to create the output. But if you start focusing on pure input and how many calls you make, etc., guess what is degraded instantly? The quality of those calls, the quality of the service they give to their clients and their candidates. And as soon as you degrade that quality of service, then you don't start to make the placements that you should be making, and clients are then upselled by those agencies providing value and providing quality, and you start to lose out. So you've got to really be careful with your KPIs, not to drive them too much, because if you do, you put too much stress and pressure onto your staff, and therefore they don't perform as they should.
So Howard, I think we've got about 6, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. There's one question we haven't tackled. We said we would, and that was to do with diversification.
I thought I'd leave that one to the end, Paul. So as we get into 2019, 2020, diversification, what's around the bend?
That's the one. I think maybe we're around the bend these days. By the way, I thought you were going to channel your Tammy Wynette a minute ago when we were stand by. I was about to burst into song. So I think, look, let's be clear. It is a mistake to attempt to be everything to everybody. We've talked endlessly over the last few years about this cliche being an inch wide and mile deep. You have to ask yourself, do you actually need to diversify? When you can actually get greater market share in your current sector by working at improving your operational and service levels and creating distance from your competitors. There is a potential for there to be a bit of a gold rush mentality. So we talked earlier about the sectors that will be fine, that will continue to do well. It's easy to look at those and think, oh my gosh, I want a piece of that. But there's a danger that you charge towards those possible riches only to find that there's not a lot there. And I think that you've got to have a passion for what you do as well. So if you look at these other sectors you're not involved in, one of the first things you've got to think about is, do you have any experience of them? Do you have the expertise? Do you have anybody in your business that might be able to go after the business, those sectors? Do they have expertise? How do we get it? How do we get the expertise? And importantly, candidate base, because it's one thing going to speak to clients seeking opportunities in areas we've not been involved in, but do you have the candidate base? How are you going to attract specialist candidates? If you haven't got them at the moment, how are you going to find them? And breaking into a niche sector is absolutely about your ability to attract quality candidates. And if these candidates are like hen's teeth, you're looking for those very rare people, you're going to have an issue. And you've got to think about your brand image too. So if your brand, the one you've built up over the years, when clients or candidates see it, it brings into sharp focus a specific type of recruitment, like my old business, Office Angels. If you think of Office Angels, you were thinking office workers, you were thinking a certain type of office worker. For me, in my business then, to perhaps go into IT as Office Angels, or going into, a finance as Office Angels, just wasn't going to work. So you would have to come up with a new brand. You'd have to come up with a subset of brands, and you'd have to think about that. You also have to think about social media. If you look at your social media right now, are you able to use your existing social media to attract candidates, to attract the specialist people that are going to be absolutely necessary for you to enter new markets? If not, then you're going to have to think of your brand. You're going to have to reset your social media. You have to build up your followers, your contacts through social media so that you can lean into that talent pool. You're going to have to think about new job boards, which job boards are going to be using, and so on and so on. It's not an easy decision to take. I would say this very importantly, and I know we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to finish on this point. Go and talk to your clients, understand what they need. If they are looking for staff in other areas outside of your normal disciplines, you need to ask yourself, can you do it for them? Because if you can't, or you know it's going to be extremely difficult, in trying to help them, you could actually damage your brand and your reputation. If you do things, you overpromise and underdeliver, then you may well do more damage to your business than you gain. So be extremely careful in terms of running off in different directions, spreading yourself thinly, because if you're doing, as an owner, new things in your business, that means you're not doing other things. If you don't have the adequate staffing behind you, then you've got a problem, and you could damage yourself more than you could gain.
I think I will sum it up in one sentence. For those who know me, I'm mid-50s, but I still teach and train martial arts. It's been a passion since I was a very small child, and I teach and train people for free. And one of the things that has always stuck with me was a comment was, don't fear the man that knows 10,000 kicks and has practiced them once. Fear the man that knows one kick and has practiced it 10,000 times. And what that says is, know your specialization, stay in your area, because if you're brilliant at that, then you will always succeed at that. And I think that's what, to me, diversification is. Yes, you might have to diversify slightly out of your core market, but as Paul said, if you start to diversify too much outside your core market, then you're almost creating a completely new business. And in this time, and in this day and age, and in this time of, in lockdown process, is that something that you should really be doing? And I don't think that really is something that would be beneficial to the business from there.
Howard, let's talk about next week, because we've come to the end.
Yes.
So you and I have spent a bit of time talking about content for next week. We've decided that we're going to talk about mentoring. Why do we want to talk about that? Well, we're professional mentors. It's what we do for a living. We mentor everyday owners, directors, leaders, and their staff one-on-one. And we know it's a skill set that you gain from hard experience and study. What we want to do next week, because we recognize that you need to be mentoring your people as we come out of lockdown into a work position, we want to pass on to you valuable tips and techniques on how you effectively mentor your people, get them in the right space, in the right mindset. And we thought now was a perfect time to pass on our best tips and techniques to you, so that you can use our methods to work with your people to get them up and running, ready for work, so you can go and smash it when you get back into the workplace.
So that's it. That's the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much. For those who are interested in tomorrow's training webinar, we have a training webinar on building and managing a contract desk. So if you've got a big contract team or you're interested in getting into that marketplace, then feel free to log on to that webinar. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much for attending. I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've enjoyed the questions. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for your input, Paul. Guys,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.